We now turn to part 3 of Rousseau's view of moral education. Now, as noted before, Rousseau has a view that there's a degeneration occurring in nature. Now, in this particular case, his view is that when the author of all things, presumably God, creates things, they start off good, and then things go bad. And the obvious question is, how does this badness occur? And the answer for Rousseau is that it's us. How does this occur? Well, he lays out some seemingly unusual and extreme charges. For example, he claims that we oblige one soil to nourish the productions of another, and one tree to bear the fruits of another. Now, at first that seemed like a very bizarre thing to claim. One tree to bear the fruits of another seemed like a bit of madness. But it turns out that, in fact, he's kind of right. Because one thing that people can do is they can take, trimmings from one tree and graft them onto another and cause the tree to grow with those graftings upon them. And if the graftings take, then the tree will in fact produce the fruit of another. And he seems to consider that problematic. Now he goes on to accuse humanity of various other terrible crimes, to mingle and confound climates, elements, and seasons, to mutilate dogs, horses, slaves, to overturn everything, to disfigure everything, to love deformity and monsters, and to desire that nothing should be as nature made it, not even ourselves. And so as he sees it, we do many bad things. Now because of this, there's a need for moral education to hopefully avoid this badness. Now as he sees it, we're born in pretty sad shape. We're born weak, destitute, and stupid. So we need to deal with those particular problems. Namely, we need to replace our weakness with strength, our being destitute with assistance, and our stupidity with better judgment. And he believes what we get this from is by education. So where does this education come from? What are its sources? Well, he claims that there are three. First, nature. Second, other people. Third, circumstances. Now, in regards to nature, it's not that we're taught by birds and trees and wolves and so forth, but his view is that by developing through natural growth, we acquire education as he sees it through nature. And interestingly, boringly enough, Rousseau has been shown to be somewhat correct. It's not that we learn facts simply by growing older, but science has shown us that our brains develop as we grow older, and this does affect our behavior. They've shown, for example, that young people, especially teenagers, are very impulsive, and as we grow older, we hopefully gain better mental processes, or get weeded out, by natural selection. Now, in terms of using these abilities, we're taught to use these developments by other people. And of course, we learn from experience about other things. So there is the education of nature, which is basically biological development. There is what other people teach us, and there are things that we learn through our own experiences on our own. Now, he believes that nature plays a key role in this process. Essentially, his view is that what we should do is watch nature carefully and follow the paths that nature lays out for us. And his view is essentially that the main thing, the way moral education works, is that it's not like the view of Aristotle, which is we have to be carefully controlled, guided by a superior force with power and understanding and wisdom. Rather, in this case, for Rousseau, it's a matter of developing naturally, learning through these methods. Now, he does have kind of a harsh side to it. He claims that nature gives children continual exercise and strengthens their constitution by ordeals, and in kind of an odd phrase, he says, teaches what pain and trouble mean. And he takes this to be the law of nature. Now, in terms of how this is supposed to go, again, as I mentioned, unlike Aristotle, who advocates a very strict system of moral education, as Rousseau sees it, to attempt to correct nature destroys the work of nature and counteracts the effect of all her cares. And so his view, roughly put, to sum up his view of education, the basic idea is to have someone who sort of guides the youth in this process, but through natural development, people will achieve goodness. The main objectives are, one, guide the youth through the natural development, and 2, keep the youth away from the corrupt influences of the city. Now, Rousseau goes on in great detail about the education of Emile, ages 10 or 12, what happens basically then, and then goes on to what happens at the age of 15. But those are listed out in detail in the notes and the readings, and don't really get into theory. They simply lay out the particular qualities that Emile will have at this point. And that brings us to the end of looking at Jean-Jacques Rousseau briefly on moral education.